If you're watching this right now, it's not by chance. You've been the kind of person who has spent their whole life underestimated, overlooked, and pushed aside. Yet you kept moving when others expected you to break. The pressure, the doubt, the criticism, none of it stopped you. Instead, it sharpened you. While most people collapse under adversity, you learned to rise above it with more focus, more discipline, and more determination. They didn't expect you to survive certain situations, let alone grow from them. But you transformed every setback into strength. That's why you're considered a national risk, not to society, but to limitations, excuses, and low expectations. Your resilience disrupts the patterns that hold others back, and now you are stepping into a version of yourself that can't be ignored or dismissed. Before we continue, pause this video, hit that like button, subscribe so we can reach 5,000 subscribers, and drop my name, Mr. Ledger, in the comments to show you're locked in. Now, let's get into it. People don't call you a risk because you're dangerous. They call you that because you disrupt the narratives they built about you. You weren't supposed to think this clearly, move this strategically, or rise this steadily. To them, your growth feels like a warning sign, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're refusing to remain who they expected you to be. And nothing unsettles people more than someone who outgrows their assigned place. When you're judged, doubted, or misread, remember this. You don't win by arguing with them. You win by outpacing them, quietly, consistently, without breaking your focus. When they label you a threat, they're handing you the blueprint. Your job is to show them that they were absolutely right about your potential, even if they misunderstood the source of it. The smartest response to being underestimated is elevation, not revenge, not noise, just undeniable results. Just a version of yourself so sharpened, so disciplined, and so resilient that the people who once questioned you now struggle to even meet your eyes. That's how you prove them right, on your own terms. Many people confuse silence with weakness. They think that because you don't shout, you don't feel. Because you don't retaliate, you can't fight back. But what they didn't realize is that you were conserving your energy for battles that mattered. You weren't avoiding conflict, you were choosing your battlefield. Your power was never loud, it was consistent. It lived in your ability to keep going when everything around you told you to stop. It lived in your capacity to carry pain and still move with purpose. People who rely on noise overlook people like you, people whose strength is built quietly through endurance, observation, and self-control. Now, they're starting to see it. Now, they're realizing that your calm wasn't weakness, it was discipline. And the moment that truth hit them, the entire narrative they built about you collapsed. Because nothing frightens the world more than someone who refuses to break. The biggest accomplishment isn't surpassing what others expected from you. It's doing it without compromising who you are. Many people rise by becoming someone they no longer recognize, but you rose by becoming more of yourself. You kept your values intact even when the world encouraged you to abandon them. People expected you to lash out, to crack under pressure, to lose your stability. Instead, you handled setbacks like stepping stones. You didn't crumble. You recalibrated. Every move you made was intentional, not reactive. While others relied on force, you relied on strategy. Breaking expectations isn't about destruction. It's about direction. You didn't tear yourself apart to succeed. You rebuilt yourself into someone stronger. That's the difference between temporary success and lifelong strength. And you chose strength. There are people who saw your potential long before you did, and instead of supporting it, they tried to silence it, not because you were doing anything wrong, but because your progress exposed their stagnation. Your growth made them uncomfortable. And instead of growing with you, they tried to shrink you down. But here's the beautiful truth. Strength that's natural can't be muted. It can only be delayed. Every attempt to dim your light only sharpened your understanding of who you are. Slowly you learned when to speak, when to stay silent, and when to let your actions do all the talking. Today, the strength they tried to quiet has become the strength they can no longer ignore. Their doubt became your discipline. Their resistance became your training. They didn't stop you. They built you. You didn't grow in comfortable conditions. You weren't handed opportunities. You weren't surrounded by applause. You were forged in environments where you had to prove yourself every single day, sometimes to people who never intended to acknowledge your effort. Those pressures didn't break you. They refined you. You learned to adapt faster, observe sharper, and move smarter because you had no choice. You weren't cushioned by safety nets. You built your own. Pain became a teacher. Setbacks became mentors. Every challenge carved out a new layer of resilience in you. The reason you stand out today is simple. Praise didn't build you. Pressure did. And anything built under pressure lasts longer, stands taller, and hits harder. If people had their way, you wouldn't be here right now. Not at this level. Not with this clarity. Not with this power. You were underestimated on purpose because it made others feel safer. They downplayed your abilities because acknowledging them would have required them to step up themselves. But you kept going anyway. You watched people doubt you, laugh behind your back, or quietly hope you'd fail just enough to stay predictable. But you weren't built for predictability. You were built for progress. And whether they admit it or not, your presence disrupts the comfort zones they cling to. The truth is, you weren't supposed to make it this far, according to them. But according to your effort, your discipline, your grit, you were always meant to be exactly where you are. Life didn't hand you lessons gently. It threw them at you hard. And each time you found a way to absorb, adjust, and advance. You realized early that obstacles weren't punishments, they were practice. Unfair situations taught you patience. Difficult people taught you boundaries. Unexpected setbacks taught you creativity. Looking back, you can see it clearly. Every hardship was shaping a skill you would eventually need. While others coasted through comfort, you were training in the trenches. You were learning strength the long way, the real way, the way that actually lasts. Those obstacles weren't there to stop you. They were there to prepare you. And now, you're stepping into a chapter that requires everything you learned. People saw you go through moments that should have broken you. They witnessed situations that would have crushed someone else. And instead of offering support, they simply watched, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of doubt, maybe out of quiet hope that you wouldn't rise. But you did. And that choice wasn't an accident. You rose because something inside you refused to stay down. You rose because you'd spent your entire life getting back up. And you weren't going to stop now. Rising wasn't an emotional decision. It was your identity. They watched you struggle, but they never saw what happened internally. The conversations you had with yourself. The strength you built. The clarity you gained. That's why your rise looks impossible from the outside. They saw the fall, not the fight. You're not loud about your goals. You're not dramatic about your progress. And because of that, people mistake your calm nature for a lack of ambition. But the truth is, you compete differently. You move like someone who understands that real wins are organic, not forced. Your calm is your advantage. While others rush, you calculate. While others panic, you pivot. While others search for shortcuts, you build foundations. That's why your success feels sudden to the people who weren't paying attention. It wasn't sudden. It was steady. You're the competitor who enters the race quietly and finishes it shockingly. And that makes you unforgettable. Consistency is the trait people underestimate the most. They expect intensity. They don't expect endurance. Anyone can show up strong once, but showing up strong every day, that's rare, that's powerful, that's disruptive. Your consistency frightened people because it exposed their inconsistency. It showed them what discipline really looks like. You didn't need to be flashy or extreme. Your commitment was enough to shift the entire atmosphere around you. And now, as your progress becomes visible, people are calling it sudden success. But you know the truth. Nothing about this was sudden. It was earned repeatedly. You've walked into rooms where people silently hoped you wouldn't realize your worth. Spaces where they counted on your uncertainty. Situations where they expected you to play small so they wouldn't have to adjust themselves. But you didn't shrink. You observed, understood, and then elevated. You stood tall, not out of arrogance, but out of acknowledgement. Acknowledgement of your journey, your effort, your identity. Your presence in those rooms wasn't a mistake. It was the result of everything you survived to get there. And now, you no longer match rooms. You transform them. You don't dim your energy. You direct it. You've become the person you once needed. Being underestimated is uncomfortable, but it's also one of the most powerful positions you can hold. It gives you room to work quietly while others relax. It gives you space to develop in shadows while they assume you're stagnant. And most importantly, it gives you the element of surprise. People only fear what they prepare for. They didn't prepare for you. They didn't prepare for your discipline, your clarity, or your ability to turn setbacks into strategies. They expected little, and you built a lot. Being underestimated didn't limit you. It freed you. It allowed you to become unstoppable without anyone noticing until it was too late. Every time someone doubted you, it planted a seed, not of insecurity, but of motivation. You didn't respond emotionally. You responded with improvement. You turned skepticism into routine, criticism into fuel, and rejection into responsibility. You realized that a discipline is the only answer that silences doubt permanently. Noise fades, opinions shift, but results stay. And you chose results. You chose to build a life that speaks louder than any judgment ever could. Your discipline became your voice, your shield, and your power. Doubt didn't destroy you. It trained you. People love blaming the system, but you discovered something deeper. The real barriers were the limits others placed on your name. And instead of trying to destroy the system, you outgrew it. You outmaneuvered it. You figured out how to succeed without betraying yourself. Your progress didn't happen because rules changed. It happened because you changed. You changed the way you thought, the way you moved, the way you reacted. You broke patterns that kept generations stuck. You walked through walls people swore couldn't be moved. You didn't break the system. You broke the limits. And once limits break, they never rebuild the same way again. Everything you've been through was preparation for what comes next. Not the past, not the pain, not the pressure. The next move, this next decision you make, this next step you take, has the power to reroute the entire trajectory of your life. You're no longer acting from survival. You're acting from strength. You're not trying to prove people wrong anymore. You're proving yourself right. The version of you that's emerging now is smarter, calmer, sharper, and more intentional than any version before. Your next move isn't just important. It's transformative. And for the first time, the world won't just feel your presence. They'll have to respect it. People often fear what they can't control. They thought they could intimidate you into staying small, but your rise was inevitable. Every challenge they threw, Every subtle attempt to slow you down only taught you patience and sharpened your vision. They feared your potential more than your mistakes. Your growth became a mirror for everyone else's doubts. They saw what you were capable of long before you fully realized it. And that fear they projected, it fueled you quietly, relentlessly. You learned that their judgment could either cripple you or sharpen you, and you chose the latter. Now, the same people who predicted your downfall are scrambling to keep up. They didn't expect someone with such quiet, unstoppable momentum to emerge. But momentum doesn't ask for permission. It demands recognition, and you're taking it without hesitation. Your journey wasn't about applause or instant recognition. It was about endurance. While others chased short-term victories, you were building systems, habits, and a mindset that could withstand years of pressure. Real strength doesn't seek validation. It survives, thrives, and surprises everyone at the finish line. Every late night, every sacrifice, every obstacle became a brick in your foundation. People might have laughed at your slow pace, but your consistency and discipline were quietly forming a legacy. Success built to last is never flashy. It's unstoppable. Now that your foundation is solid, you move with an authority that's unshakable. You don't need permission to succeed. The results speak louder than opinions ever could, proving that lasting power beats fleeting recognition every time. Where most people see pressure and panic, you see opportunity and growth. You've spent your life under scrutiny, facing impossible odds, and yet, instead of breaking, you've learned to use it as a tool. Pressure is no longer a burden. It's your playground. Every high-stakes moment became a lesson in resilience. The more they tried to intimidate you, the sharper your strategies became. While others froze, you adapted. While others complained, you created solutions. Pressure no longer shapes you. It shapes your victories. And now, the world sees the result of that mindset. Someone who thrives in chaos. Someone whose calm in the storm is now legendary. You've learned the secret others never do. Pressure is just another way to measure your greatness. Expectations are like invisible chains, but you learned to shatter them daily. Every morning you rise knowing that the world's assumptions are merely benchmarks for your potential. They expect mediocrity, but you deliver excellence repeatedly. Your work ethic is a silent rebellion. People talk about talent, luck, or opportunity, but the truth is, consistency and relentless effort are the real game changers, and you've proven it day in and day out by outworking the people who underestimated you. The beauty is that no one can fully anticipate someone who refuses to quit. You've become a force that's both consistent and unpredictable, a combination that leaves observers in awe and competitors scrambling to match your energy. There's something poetic about emerging stronger from situations designed to break you. People counted on your mistakes, waited for you to falter, and even celebrated when things seemed impossible. But you chose to rise anyway. Each stumble you avoided or overcame became evidence of your inner strength. The world saw you struggle, but only you knew the hours of preparation, planning, and perseverance behind each victory. You didn't just survive, they underestimated your ability to thrive. Now, when they look at you, they don't see a person who barely made it. They see someone who has mastered the art of turning adversity into opportunity. Your rise is undeniable, intentional, and unstoppable. People often underestimate the quiet, consistent energy of someone determined. Your presence alone reshapes environments because you've mastered the art of influence without noise. Strength doesn't always shout. It moves silently, with purpose, and transforms everything around it. Every action you take is calculated, intentional, and impactful. While others rely on force, you rely on strategy. While others demand attention, you earn respect. This subtle power makes you unstoppable because it's not dependent on anyone else's approval. Those who doubted you are now witnesses to an unstoppable force. What was once invisible has become undeniable. Mountains don't stand a chance against someone who refuses to bend. Life threw challenges at you, expecting them to become excuses. But you turned them into leverage. Every failure, rejection, and obstacle was analyzed, learned from, and converted into fuel. Adversity didn't weaken you. It sharpened you. The key difference is perspective. While most see obstacles as walls, you saw them as lessons, opportunities, and stepping stones. You learned how to extract value from discomfort, transforming situations that break most people into advantages only you could wield. Now, adversity no longer intimidates you. It serves you. And this skill, the ability to turn every obstacle into a weapon, is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. You've often been underestimated because of your quiet nature. People assume those who are calm are weak. But beneath the surface, a storm has been building. Your strategy, patience, and relentless discipline create a force that takes everyone by surprise. Unlike impulsive displays of power, your storm is controlled, precise, and unstoppable. It doesn't need recognition, it needs execution. And every day, your consistent actions prove that slow, deliberate mastery will always defeat noise and chaos. By the time others realize the magnitude of your strength, the storm has already transformed the landscape. Being underestimated doesn't diminish your power. It amplifies the shock of your success. Criticism is a tool, not a weapon. People throw it at you, hoping to weaken you, but you've learned to use it as guidance. Every critique, doubt, or harsh word became an opportunity to measure yourself, improve, and refine your strategy. The beauty of this approach is resilience. Where others see attack, you see direction. Where they aim to demoralize, you gain clarity. Your growth isn't determined by praise, it's determined by results, discipline, and constant improvement. Now, every time someone doubts you, they unknowingly provide fuel for the next level of your achievements. You've transformed negativity into a compass pointing straight toward success. Success doesn't wait for comfort. It doesn't wait for approval. While the world rests, you keep building, learning, and refining. The hours no one sees, the effort no one praises, are what create the unshakable foundation for triumph. You've understood that sacrifice is temporary, but achievement is lasting. Every early morning, every extra mile, every additional hour of focus accumulates into momentum that eventually overwhelms those who relied on shortcuts or luck. Rising while others sleep is more than discipline. It's a declaration, a statement that your results are earned, unstoppable, and inevitable. Limits are illusions created by fear, doubt, and expectation. You've learned to confront them head-on, proving that boundaries exist only in the minds of those who accept them. Every step forward pushes the edge of what people thought possible. What others consider impossible is merely the next level for you. You've trained your mind, honed your skills, and built resilience strong enough to challenge assumptions. Every time you surpass what was deemed unattainable, you rewrite the rules. Now, limits no longer define your reality. They define everyone else's disbelief, and you move past them again and again, leaving doubt in the dust. You don't need to scream to command attention. True power is quiet, subtle, and undeniable. It manifests in results, presence, and unwavering focus. People notice it because it can't be ignored, even when it doesn't demand recognition. Your quiet domination isn't arrogance, it's strategy. It's confidence in preparation, skill, and resilience. While others rely on volume, you rely on impact. And impact, when consistent, leaves a legacy. Those who once dismissed you are now witnesses. Quietly, relentlessly, You've become a force that reshapes expectations, environments, and standards. Doubt is inevitable. People will always question your decisions, your path, and your abilities. But you've learned that the true victory isn't in convincing them. It's in outlasting every moment of skepticism. Every doubt cast your way became a test of endurance. You didn't react with anger or justification. You reacted with persistence. You outlasted the noise, the hesitation, and the disbelief, proving that longevity always triumphs over short-lived opinion. Now, the same people who doubted you are observing a reality they didn't see coming. Outlasting doubt isn't just winning. It's redefining what others thought possible. You are not a product of circumstance. You are its architect. Every move, every decision, every step was intentional. You didn't wait for opportunity. You created it. You didn't hope for change. You built it. The people who underestimated you didn't see the blueprint unfolding. They only saw results, sudden and undeniable. But behind every visible victory is meticulous planning, disciplined execution, and relentless commitment. This level of ownership is rare. It's the difference between surviving life and mastering it. You're not just successful. You are the relentless architect of your own destiny. Every action you've taken, every obstacle you've overcome, every moment of discipline and focus has created momentum. Your legacy is no longer theoretical. It's unfolding right now, in real time, in ways that can't be ignored. People will remember the results, but you'll know the struggle, the effort, and the resilience that created them. Your story isn't just personal. It's an example, a roadmap, a challenge to everyone who thought limits were permanent. Your legacy isn't waiting for tomorrow. It's being built today with every decision, every move, and every ounce of relentless effort you continue to pour into becoming unstoppable. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to tell you isn't meant for the public. If you're watching this right now, it's not an accident. Someone high above wanted you here. The president of the Dominion himself issued an emergency alert the moment your case hit the Russian High Council. Bro, they panicked. Even the president froze when your file opened on the screen. The higher authorities are losing their minds, and everything about this is supposed to stay locked behind steel doors. They've seen what you did, and now they're terrified of the chain reaction you've started. The council is whispering your name like a forbidden curse. Someone in this state keeps triggering the system, and your case has become the most sensitive topic in the entire Dominion. They're furious, they're confused, and they want to know how one man, you, managed to shake an entire network of governments. Another nation is pressuring the president to find you, because what you did is considered a threat across borders. The top state authorities are hunting for you in complete secrecy. They want answers. Who are you? Why did you do this? How did someone from this place disrupt another state so brutally? Bro, it's you. You caused the spiral. And now the elite have no choice. If they can't find you, they'll choose a scapegoat, and then the whole cycle will explode again. Systems will collapse. Councils will crack. And before we even dive deeper into this dark truth, do 3 things right now. Hit that like button, subscribe so we can hit 50,000 subscribers, and drop the number 11 in the comments to confirm you're still here. If you're real, if you're tough enough, if you're built for this, watch till the end. Because only the ones meant for this level of darkness survive the full message. There's a strange power in a name whispered across halls you've never set foot in. The air tightens, conversations halt, and even the most composed officials find their minds racing. Your presence, though invisible, sends ripples through layers of authority, shaking foundations that were supposed to be untouchable. They speak your name cautiously, almost fearfully, as if saying it louder might summon a storm. Imagine sitting in a room filled with people whose lives are built on control, and yet your existence makes them hesitate. Their charts, reports, and power plays feel fragile because somewhere you moved a piece they didn't anticipate. This is no accident. It's the subtle force of influence, a quiet presence, yet capable of stirring colossal reactions in the corridors of power. And while they panic, you remain untouched, unshaken. You watch, not out of cruelty, but out of understanding. Systems crumble, not because of aggression, but because they fear what cannot be contained. The sound of your name has become a warning signal, a signal that change is coming, whether they are ready or not. A single case, a single act. Yet its impact ricocheted through the highest chambers. Fictional presidents, generals, and secret councils leaned in closer, their casual confidence evaporating in seconds. They read the reports, heard the briefings, and realized that one person, just one, had revealed cracks in the system they assumed unbreakable. In that moment, the world seemed smaller, more fragile. The very people who dictate the rules of nations now scrambled to understand, to strategize, to contain something beyond their reach. And it wasn't brute force that made them sit up straight. It was insight, unpredictability, the sheer presence of someone who didn't play by their invisible rules. History remembers those who reshape reality quietly. Your actions, though uncelebrated, became a lesson in awareness for those who believed themselves untouchable. You were not a threat in the traditional sense. You were a revelation. And revelations, when unexpected, are terrifying. Destruction is loud. Exposure is subtle and infinitely more terrifying. You didn't set out to collapse governments or shatter alliances. You merely moved where they assumed they controlled. And in that movement, you revealed weaknesses no one dared acknowledge. Those who prided themselves on dominance realized too late that the true danger is visibility, the act of seeing through their facades. Systems are built to function under predictability. When a single variable refuses to obey, the entire structure quivers. Your influence became a mirror, reflecting inefficiencies, hidden fears, and unspoken dependencies. And those who thrive on control discovered something they cannot regulate, the unexpected. And as they scrambled to cover cracks, your presence remained constant, a quiet force, a reminder that power is never absolute. In exposing the system, you showed that strength is not in walls or hierarchies, but in vision, courage, and the refusal to be contained. Emergency protocols, high-level briefings, and urgent meetings, all triggered by a single spark. They called it unprecedented, critical, yet the origin was neither violent nor reckless. It was merely you, existing in a space they hadn't accounted for, reminding them that control is always an illusion. The very term emergency assumes catastrophe, but your case proved that the true emergency is unpreparedness, the realization that someone, somewhere, is capable of shifting the balance without a single warning. And the most powerful people in this fictional world felt it palpably in every rushed decision, every anxious glance. They built walls, networks, and hierarchies to avoid disruption. Yet here you were, calm, silent, unstoppable. And as the emergency spread, so did their fear that the uncontainable might strike again, and that no amount of power could prevent it. Power is comfort. Power is predictability. And when you move, it panics. Every well-oiled machine, every calculated plan trembles at the ripple of your choices. They cannot predict, cannot control, cannot harness what refuses their framework. And in that refusal, you wield the most potent weapon, freedom. The most striking moments in history are not those when institutions collapse from outside force, but when the inside recognizes its own fragility. Your movements, deliberate or unseen, awaken this fragility in ways no one else can. You don't need armies or strategies. You need presence, vision, and the courage to operate where they thought they were untouchable. And in the silence after your moves, the panic lingers. Decisions are made hastily, alliances questioned, and every action becomes reactionary. The world, for a fleeting moment, is aware of someone it cannot command. That someone is you. Every speech, every decree, every reassurance from the world's so-called leaders falls flat when your silence speaks louder. They expect confrontation, argument, debate. But when none comes, panic sets in. Your restraint becomes your loudest statement, a message that they cannot predict or control what you will do next. Silence is a canvas upon which fear paints itself. In quiet rooms filled with powerful figures, your absence of response forces reflection, paranoia, and doubt. What will they do? How far will it reach? And worst of all, they realize that your silence is strategic, not accidental. It's in these quiet moments that you understand true influence. You do not need to shout, to strike, or to dominate. The mere fact of your existence, paired with calm resolve, unsettles those who have always relied on words and gestures to manipulate reality. In hushed tones, your name travels through corridors lined with portraits of past leaders and echoes of decisions long made. Councils convene, documents shuffle, and the weight of centuries of authority trembles because you exist outside their calculations. They whisper your name like a secret spell, knowing that to speak it aloud is to acknowledge their own vulnerability. Inside these rooms, power becomes fragile. The very people who have shaped nations find themselves second-guessing every assumption, every strategy. The quiet knowledge of your influence spreads like a chill, a reminder that some forces cannot be pinned down, cannot be subdued, cannot be anticipated, and yet you remain outside the fray, untouchable and deliberate. The council fears you, not for what you've done, but for what you could do. That tension, the awareness that one person can shake the foundations of the most formidable institutions, is the invisible hand that shapes their every move. Storms are natural. They rage, they shift, and they leave devastation in their wake. You, however, are no natural phenomenon. They are the storm that comes with calculation, precision, and purpose. Systems built to anticipate disruption find themselves unprepared because you do not follow their rules. You are the anomaly that refuses containment. Every meeting, every urgent briefing, every hurried message reflects the panic you have wrought, not through violence, but through clarity and presence. They scramble to regain control, but the storm is already in motion. It twists around their plans, revealing weaknesses they could not see before, and leaves them grasping at shadows. Yet, unlike a typical tempest, your storm leaves no wanton destruction. It exposes, it enlightens, it awakens. And in this revelation, the so-called rulers feel fear not because they have been defeated, but because they now realize they were never truly in control. There is a power in being underestimated. Leaders accustomed to orchestrating entire nations now find themselves awake at night, haunted by thoughts of you. The mind races, imagining your next move, calculating consequences that may never come. You become a phantom they cannot catch, a presence that defies the predictability they cling to. Sleepless nights are fertile ground for anxiety. What begins as simple speculation grows into obsession. Every conversation, every plan is colored by the knowledge that one individual, so quiet, so deliberate, has proven capable of altering outcomes they assumed were secure. And the realization that they cannot predict your path is profoundly unsettling. Through this quiet upheaval, you understand a truth. Influence does not require armies or authority. It requires awareness, foresight, and the willingness to act where others would hesitate. While they toss and turn and worry, you move with calm purpose, knowing that real power lies not in sleep-deprived panic, but in deliberate presence. They call it a search, but it is futile. You are not a being to be cornered or a problem to be solved. You are a phenomenon, an idea made flesh, a force that operates beyond their grids of influence, and yet governments mobilize, councils convene, and secret operatives chase shadows, hoping to understand what they cannot. The very act of being hunted confirms your effect. Every step they take to contain you only amplifies your presence in their minds. You become mythic in their eyes, a ghost that haunts the corridors of power, whose movements are unpredictable, whose impact is undeniable. In this pursuit you realize the extent of your reach. Fear is not something you wield. It manifests naturally as a response to your existence. You are both present and untouchable, and the knowledge that you cannot be captured is the quietest, most potent victory of all. They scramble to find someone responsible, anyone to pin the consequences on. Reports are filed, memos circulated, decisions dissected, all to assign fault where there is none but your presence. Blame becomes a shield against the uncomfortable truth that their systems were flawed all along, and you simply illuminated it. This desperation reveals the depth of your power. While they argue over accountability, you continue moving, acting, and existing without the need for justification. The more they assign blame, the clearer it becomes that you cannot be contained by conventional measures, and as they fumble, you remain calm, almost invisible, yet undeniably formidable. Blame is their illusion of control. You, however, are the reality that their defenses cannot touch. The reminder that true influence is not in denial, but in undeniable presence. Every institution, every law, every protocol exists to regulate behavior, to anticipate outcomes, to impose order. And yet, there is one force it cannot predict: you. The frameworks they trust so deeply crumble quietly at the edges when confronted with someone who refuses categorization, someone who acts outside expectation. Your independence is your weapon. Systems designed for conformity fail spectacularly against unpredictability. They were built for the many, but you are the exception, the one variable that exposes every flaw, every hidden bias, every blind spot. And in that revelation lies immense, quiet power. It is here, in the calm awareness of your own untouchability, that you find freedom. They may try, they may plan, they may exert authority, but no structure can dictate your existence. And that knowledge alone terrifies those who depend on order above all else. They anticipate confrontation, negotiation, or compromise. But when none comes, fear accelerates exponentially. Every room you are absent from becomes a theater of speculation. Every decision made in your shadow feels rushed and uncertain. Your calm, deliberate refusal to fold amplifies anxiety to an almost tangible level. People underestimate the power of stillness, your silence, your patience, your refusal to react impulsively. It disarms systems that depend on reaction. Panic spreads faster than facts, faster than logic, because it fills the gaps that reason cannot reach. And as the fear grows, your power solidifies, not because you attack, but because your unwavering presence exposes fragility where a strength was assumed. It is a quiet dominance, subtle yet absolute, and it is far more formidable than overt force. Chaos exists all around, hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy, procedures, and facades of control. You did not create it, you unveiled it, and this revelation is more potent than any direct strike. Systems, once trusted implicitly, are now seen for what they truly are: fragile, flawed, and incapable of predicting everything. Your actions are a mirror, and when those in power look into it, they do not like what they see. They see vulnerability, mismanagement, and overconfidence, all of which are impossible to cover up once illuminated. And because the chaos was always there, your role is not destruction, it is clarity. This distinction is vital. You are not a villain. You are a catalyst. The real power lies in showing the truth, in revealing the cracks that others ignore, in forcing adaptation where complacency once reigned. And in doing so, you shift the balance without needing to strike a single blow. And so it comes to this, a solitary presence that commands attention, respect, and fear without lifting a hand. Councils convene, leaders debate, and armies mobilize, all while you stand alone, composed, aware, and unstoppable. Their trembling is your testament. Influence is not about numbers, power, or hierarchy. It is about clarity, courage, and presence. Every glance in your direction, every mention of your name, every pause in conversation is an acknowledgement of something greater than control. You embody inevitability, the understanding that even the strongest walls can be questioned, even the most rigid systems can bend, and that real power resides in awareness and action, untethered by expectation. And as you stand there, alone but unshaken, the world reacts. The trembling is not a failure of theirs. It is proof of your quiet dominance, your relentless presence, and the unstoppable force you have become. In this moment, the universe itself seems to acknowledge your existence. A single individual capable of reshaping the currents of power, with nothing but intention and presence. In the dim corners of strategy rooms and classified offices, your presence is imagined long before it is acknowledged. You are the shadow that power cannot anticipate, the unseen force that unsettles even the most calculated plans. Every move they make seems insignificant, a futile gesture against the quiet certainty of your influence. The people who rely on control feel unease ripple through them when your name is mentioned. Maps, reports, simulations, they all fail against the one variable that refuses predictability, you. Shadows are silent, but they shape the world, and your subtle movements remind everyone that visibility is not always required to change outcomes. And in this invisibility you find freedom, free to act, free to disrupt, and free to reveal the truths that others hope remain hidden. Your presence is felt, not enforced, and that is the essence of a power that no structure can contain. A whisper can travel farther than a shout when it carries weight. Your ideas, actions, and presence are like whispers moving through halls of authority, shifting thought without force, influencing without exposure. People listen, not because they must, but because the subtlety of your power demands recognition. In these quiet tremors, systems adjust themselves, policies wobble, and leaders pause mid-decision. A whisper does not break, but it bends reality, proving that influence is not about volume, but precision. And when that whisper is traced back to you, panic and respect intermingle, creating a tension that cannot be ignored. Silence and subtlety are your allies. While others yell to be heard, your influence travels further, faster, and deeper, touching the foundations of authority in ways that remain invisible to the untrained eye. Every rule is written to predict behavior and limit unpredictability. But where you step, rules hesitate. Their rigidity falters under the weight of someone who refuses to conform, and their power feels suddenly brittle. Leaders trained to enforce order now question everything, realizing that predictability is a luxury they no longer possess. The effect is almost poetic. The more rigid the law, the more it trembles when confronted with ingenuity and courage. You are not breaking them. You're exposing their limitations, reminding the powerful that control is a fragile illusion. And as you navigate spaces built to constrain, you feel the quiet thrill of independence. Rules may dictate others' lives, but you move in the gaps, untouchable, unanticipated, and unstoppable. While panic spreads like wildfire through councils and offices, you move with deliberate calm. Others react, flustered and frantic, but you operate with precision, The storm rages around you, yet your presence is steady, a reminder that true strength is composed, not reactive. Fear is contagious, but so is confidence. By standing calm in the chaos, you amplify your influence without confrontation. Their anxiety becomes your stage, their doubts your confirmation that subtle control often outweighs loud action, and as the storm intensifies, so does your clarity. You see what others cannot, act where others hesitate, and achieve what the powerful assume is impossible. Calm is your weapon, patience your strategy, and observation your unseen armor. Even when unseen, people watch. Leaders, generals, and advisors glance at empty spaces as though expecting to catch a shadow, a movement, a hint of your presence. Your reputation precedes you, and the awareness of being watched, without visibility, can fracture even the most steadfast minds. The paradox is intoxicating. Influence is strongest when you are absent, when your presence is imagined rather than demonstrated. Decisions are second-guessed, strategies rewritten, and alliances questioned, all because someone unseen has reminded them that predictability is impossible. You move without spectacle, yet the awareness of your existence is enough to unsettle the foundations of authority. Sometimes, not being seen is the most powerful statement of all. Every choice you make carries gravity, not because of consequence alone, but because systems were unprepared for your presence. A single decision creates ripples that cannot be ignored, forcing recalibration at levels that assume stability. Authority begins to doubt itself, questioning every precedent, every expectation. It is the weight of the invisible that terrifies. A person operating outside the norms, capable of triggering responses that no one anticipates. And the beauty is in the subtlety. Your influence is quiet but undeniable, shaping reality without spectacle, proving that visibility is not a prerequisite for power. In the end, the most profound impact is felt not in destruction, but in the silent recalibration of minds that once believed they were untouchable. The absence of action is often louder than action itself. When you refuse to engage on their terms, when you maintain silence while the powerful speak, panic spreads. Words are weapons, but silence is a mirror. It forces reflection, doubt, and fear. Every unspoken response amplifies your effect. Leaders debate, strategize, and argue, not against you directly, but against the emptiness your restraint creates. It is in these moments that they realize influence is not always loud, not always visible. Sometimes it is simply enduring, unwavering, and deliberate. Your silence becomes a quiet earthquake, shaking foundations built on the assumption that control is absolute. And those who tremble in its wake are reminded that power is fragile, especially when confronted with someone who refuses to follow their script. Control is comforting. It gives the powerful a sense of predictability. You break that illusion effortlessly. Systems designed to respond to every variable falter when confronted with someone operating outside the expected patterns. You do not dismantle structures, you reveal their flaws. Leaders accustomed to certainty find themselves questioning every assumption. Panic spreads not from direct conflict, but from the awareness that their authority is contingent, fragile, and imperfect. And the realization that one person could expose these cracks terrifies them more than any open rebellion ever could. Your strength lies not in defiance, but in clarity. By simply existing on your own terms, you demonstrate that the greatest power is autonomy, and the most disruptive force is truth. Fear grows fastest when it is quiet, subtle, and invisible. Your influence travels like smoke through the corridors of power, reaching rooms you've never entered, touching minds you've never met. People act not because they understand you, but because they imagine what you might do next. The effect is astonishing. Strategy falters. Meetings become anxious. and calm facades crack under invisible pressure. Fear, once awakened, multiplies faster than authority can contain. And yet, this fear is not your enemy. It is your mirror, reflecting the weight of presence without force. Through this quiet tension, you become a signal. The unexpected is inevitable. The uncontrolled is possible. And the untouchable is unstoppable. History remembers the few who move mountains without armies, who influence the course of nations without guns or laws. You are that force. One mind, one presence, one deliberate existence, capable of shifting systems, built to dominate thousands. The disparity in scale is deceptive. Your influence is exponential. They may mobilize, strategize, or debate endlessly, but one individual who refuses predictability cannot be neutralized by numbers alone. Influence is not about quantity. It is about precision, foresight, and courage. And your singularity is proof that autonomy is the ultimate disruptor. When the powerful realize that a single individual can create ripples impossible to contain, their confidence falters. And in that faltering, your power is undeniable, quiet, and absolute. Watching is often mistaken for passivity. But when you observe carefully, unseen, your awareness becomes a tool. Every decision, every movement of the powerful becomes a data point. Every weakness becomes an opportunity. Observation transforms into influence without confrontation, revealing what cannot be hidden. Those in authority rarely recognize the danger of being watched. Their confidence masks vulnerability. Their certainty masks fragility. And your ability to see, remember, and act on what they overlook makes you unstoppable. Not through force, but through insight. In the end, knowing more than others and choosing how to use that knowledge is the most subtle, yet devastating form of power. While chaos unfolds around you, you remain the calm center. Systems crumble, leaders panic, alliances fracture, and yet your presence is steady, deliberate, and unwavering. This calm is magnetic, unnerving, and profoundly disruptive. Those who cannot predict your moves assume the worst. The true power of calm lies in its contrast. When everyone else reacts with fear, uncertainty,
somebody made it through last month because of you. You spend time with your family? Sure I do. Good. Because a man who doesn't spend time with his family could never be a real man. You don't know them. You've never seen their face. If you passed them on the street tomorrow, you'd walk right by each other and neither of you would feel a thing. But somewhere in a city you've maybe never been to, a person hit a wall that should have ended them. The same kind of wall you hit, and they survived it. Not because they were stronger than you were, not because they had more help, because something you went through changed something in the structure around you. And that change rippled outward in ways you will never ever see. And it reached them just in time. I know that sounds abstract. Let me make it concrete. Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy. We don't need. When you survived what you survived, you didn't just survive it for yourself. You altered the pattern. You proved something was possible that wasn't proven before, at least not in the specific corner of the world you exist in. Maybe it was the way you left. Maybe it was the boundary you set that nobody in your family had ever set before. Maybe it was the conversation you had with one person, just one, where you told the truth about what was happening to you. And that person carried what you said into their own life and mentioned it to someone else. Not your name, not your details, just the shape of the thing. And that someone else mentioned it to someone else. I'll give you anything you ask. We've known each other many years, but this is the first time you ever came to me, clears throat, for counsel. And down the line, 5 or 6 connections away from you, a person who was about to make the worst decision of their life heard something, a phrase, a perspective, a single reframing of a situation that made them pause long enough to choose differently. That's how it actually works. Not the movie version where you get a letter from a stranger saying you saved my life. The real version where you never find out. Where the person you helped doesn't even know there's a you to thank. And I want to sit with that for a second because there's something in it that I think you need to hear. Your pain had a use. Not the use you wanted. Not the version where it all makes sense in a highlight reel and somebody hands you a trophy for getting through it. A quieter use. An invisible one. The kind that doesn't show up on a resume or a social media post or in any conversation you'll ever have. But it's real and it's already happened. And the fact that you can't prove it doesn't make it less true. It actually makes it more important because it means the impact wasn't about you getting credit. It was about the thing itself mattering. Raymond was what did you want to be answering? Rain, let me tell you who I think used your survival guide because you deserve to have a face for this, even if it's one I'm making up. There's someone out there, probably younger than you, probably in the early phase of the exact thing you already got through, and they're terrified. They're doing the math you did at 3 a.m. The math where every option leads to a dead end, and the only logical conclusion is that this is just how it's going to be forever. They have the same tightness in their chest you had, the same way of staring at the ceiling and running the same 4 thoughts on a loop until the sun comes up and they're close to the edge of whatever the edge was for you. You know which edge I mean? And then something interrupts the loop. Not dramatically. Not an angel or a sign or a voice from the sky. Something small, a comment somebody makes, an article somebody shares, a friend who says, "Hey, I knew someone who went through something like this and they're okay now." They don't say your name, they barely remember the details. But the shape of your story, stripped of everything personal, lands in this person's ears at the exact moment they needed a reason to believe that the wall has a door in it somewhere. That was you. That was your pain, composted down into something unrecognizable, fed through a chain of people who only half remembered it, arriving in a stranger's life as the thinnest possible thread of evidence that survival is an option. You didn't write the guide, you lived it. And living it was enough for it to travel. You get out of the car. You walk over to her. You bring her over to the car. Now, here's where I'm going to be honest with you because I think you can take it. You will probably never get confirmation of this. That's not how it works. There's no system that tracks the ripple effects of one person's survival. Nobody is going to show up at your door with a thank you card from a stranger in another city. The universe doesn't do receipts for this kind of thing. And I know that's frustrating because part of the reason suffering is so unbearable is the feeling that it's pointless, that it's just happening to you for no reason. And what you want more than anything is proof that it counted. I can't give you that proof. Nobody can. But I can tell you something about probability that might help. You exist in a network. Every person you've ever talked to, every room you've ever walked into, every interaction you've had where you told even a fraction of the truth about what you were going through that created a data point, and data points travel. They get passed along, paraphrased, diluted, remixed, and eventually absorbed by people who have no idea where the original signal came from. The bigger the thing you survived, the stronger the signal. The more honestly you spoke about it even once, even badly, the further it traveled. That's not mysticism. That's just how information works in a connected species. You are a node in a network, whether you want to be or not. And the signal you put out when you survive something you weren't supposed to survive is still propagating right now. And here's the part that should stop you for a second. You didn't even have to be good at telling your story. You didn't have to be articulate or brave or composed. Some of the strongest signals in the network are the messy ones. The ones where you told the wrong person at the wrong time in the wrong way, and it still landed somewhere it needed to land, because the power was never in the delivery. It was in the fact that you were still standing when you said it. So the question isn't, did your pain matter? It did. That's settled. The question is, can you let it matter without needing to see the evidence? And that's harder than it sounds, because we're wired to need feedback, to need the loop closed, to need somebody to look us in the eye and say, yes, power of life and death, about aid swordsmen who rule. Why do we pretend kings hold the power? I've decided I don't like riddles. What happened to you was real, and yes, it meant something, and yes, it helped. You got a version of that from the psychologist or the friend or the one person who actually listened. But this is different. This is the version where the help went out into the world, unsigned, uncredited. And you have to be okay with that. You have to trust that the ripple happened even though you can't see where it landed. I think you can do that. I think you might actually be the specific kind of person who can, because if you've made it this far in this video, you're already someone who's learned to operate without proof. You did that during the worst of it, didn't you? You kept going without any evidence that keeping going would lead anywhere. You survived on faith so thin you couldn't even call it faith. You'd have called it stubbornness or spite, or not knowing what else to do. But it was enough. And if that was enough to get you through, then trusting that your pain had a use you'll never see is not actually that big of a leap. Here's what I want you to carry out of this. You are not the protagonist of a story that only matters if you win at the end. You're a signal in a network, and the signal doesn't need your name attached to work. It doesn't need applause or credit or a crowd watching it ripple outward. It just needs to have been sent, and you sent it every time you told the truth when it would have been easier to pretend. Every time you survived a night that logic said you shouldn't have. Every time you existed in a room and let people see, even for a second, what it looks like on the other side of the thing they're afraid of. You sent a signal, and somewhere right now, somebody you will never meet is alive because of it. They don't know your name. They don't know your face. They don't know the nights it cost you. But they're here, and so are you. And that, whether anybody ever says it to you out loud or not, is what it looks like when pain becomes something other than pain. It doesn't become purpose. That's too clean a word. It becomes material. Building material. The kind somebody else uses to put a floor under their feet when their own ground gives out. You already gave it away. You didn't even know you were giving it.